Okay guys, today I'm going to be making pot roast. Okay, here's our beef. And you may notice that there's a lot of fat on the back. Like you see there. I'm going to cut a lot of that off. Not all of it, but a lot. I'm going to place the meat there, and I'm going to let it sit in some salt water for about a half an hour. And I'm going to rub the water against the meat, just give it a nice scrub. So you can use about 2 tablespoons of salt, about that much. I'm going to add some cold water. And I'm going to rub it like this and make sure you get all that funk off. So all that dirty water. And make sure the rest of that residue comes off the meat. So just allow that to soak in the salt water. If you don't have salt, you can use vinegar or lemon juice, like I always tell you in my other videos. So let that soak for a while. Meanwhile, we're going to talk about the seasons that we're going to be using. Okay guys, so now we're going to focus on the seasonings that you're going to be seasoning your pot roast with. You're going to need some salt. If you want to use seasoned salt, you can do so. I even use celery salt sometimes because of the celery flavor, but most people use regular salt. You're going to need some thyme. I'm going to be using some rosemary leaves. Now if you can get some fresh thyme and some fresh rosemary, I recommend you do so. But rosemary seasoning and thyme seasoning would do the job. I'm going to be using some onion powder, some garlic powder, and some black pepper. Now, let me put this out there. If I don't have rosemary, I use whole oregano, which is another seasoning that some people use. Okay? And again, if you don't want to use regular salt, you can use seasoning salt or celery salt. So I'm just letting you guys know that, just to let you guys know that you have other options, all right? Because some people don't like regular salt. They just think that it doesn't have no flavor, which it really don't. Salt just gives food taste, but seasoning salt and celery salt gives it additional flavor and taste, all right? So those are the seasons you're going to need. So what I'm going to do is, just to ensure that the season gets all the way through to the core of the beef, I'm going to poke some holes in it. And this is what I tend to do with my whole roasted chicken before I make it, even though I didn't do that in my whole roasted chicken video. And it's what I do with my turkey as well. This is what I do whenever I'm making a really big piece of meat, just to make sure that the flavor seeps down into the meat. I poke holes in it, and I like to marinate it overnight. So I'm going to do that first. Recommend that you guys do the same. Most people, when they're making pot roast, like I said, they don't do this. And I'm going to season it with my salt here. Okay. Going to season it with a little bit of garlic powder, just a little bit. Use a little bit of garlic powder because we're going to be using minced garlic. I'm going to use a little bit of onion powder, just a little bit. Don't use too much. I'm going to use my pepper. Use my pepper, okay. And I'm going to add the thyme. And the rosemary leaves. Okay. So there's our well-seasoned piece of meat. Last but not least, going to sprinkle this with some W sauce. And use about 2 tablespoons worth, okay? And that's going to seep through those holes and get into the meat. Just allow this to marinate in that season overnight. And that's going to give your pot roast a really, really, really good flavor. All right, you let it marinate and sit overnight. If you can't wait all night, do this in the morning and then cook it during the evening when you get back from work. But you want to give that flavor some time to seep through to the core of the meat. All right, so I'm gonna just let this sit for 4 hours because I'm doing a video. Usually I let it sit for overnight, but I'm only going to let it sit for 4 hours. So let's focus on the vegetables that we're going to be using now. Okay guys, so I'm going to chop up 4 small potatoes, and I'm going to be adding that to my pot roast. So make sure you have 4 small potatoes. It depends on how big your beef is. If you have a really big piece of beef, then you can use more potatoes, but this is a small piece of beef. Okay, so for this pot roast, I'm only going to use 4 small potatoes. I actually recommend that y'all go out and get some red potatoes. All right, they cook better when making pot roast, but I'm going to use these 4 white russet potatoes. We're also going to be using some carrots. I don't chop any carrots up. I just use the cut and peeled baby carrots, and I add that to the pot roast. They're already cut and peeled. All you gotta do is rinse them off, and then you can add that to the pot roast. So make sure you have some of these. Mine are still slightly frozen because I had them in the freezer. So get some baby cut and peeled carrots. I'm going to chop up some celery. We're going to be adding some celery to our pot roast. So make sure you have at least 3 stalks of celery. I'm going to chop them up and dice them up into really small pieces. So these are the peppers that I had left over from my oxtail video. I only make half whenever I make oxtails or pot roast. I don't use the full pepper, obviously. That'll be too much. But I froze them, and I have a red one left, half of orange pepper left, a little bit of green and yellow peppers left. So I'm going to chop all of these up, all right? Okay guys, so I chopped up all of the vegetables. Here are our onions, our red, orange, yellow, and green peppers. And we have our chopped up celery here as well. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to saute our vegetables first. So let's go to the oven and begin sauteing our vegetables. Okay, so you're going to get a pan and place it over high heat. If you have numbers on your dollar, turn it to about an 8. I'm going to be using some already old oil that I had from when I made my chicken last. I'm going to add about 2 tablespoons of oil. We're going to add our nicely diced vegetables. And we're also going to add our minced garlic. Going to add 1 big teaspoon. Actually 2 teaspoons. Most people don't use different color peppers, but I do because I like it to give the pot roast just a better look once it's done. Makes it look nice and colorful. You want to let these go for about, say about 7 to 10 minutes. We're also going to add our carrots. Okay guys, so you know they're done sauteing when they get slightly burnt, the vegetables. You can tell that they're cooked. Pat this down with flour. This is going to help brown it, because we want to brown it on both sides. It's well coated like that. That's where you want it to look. Okay, so you want to get a pot big enough for your roast, and you're going to add a little oil. This is old oil, by the way. The roast. And you're going to allow it to get brown on that side. So let it go on each side for about 7 minutes on each side. Going to add the broth now. And you're going to reduce your heat to low heat. So what I do is, after I brown it on both sides and I fill it up with the beef broth and water, I just let it simmer for about 4 hours. And I don't add the vegetables and the potatoes until after, I believe, the 3rd hour. Okay, so after 3 hours of cooking, that's when you will go ahead and dump your sauteed vegetables and your chopped up potatoes into this pot. Okay, so you add that during the last hour of cooking time. So cover that with a top, and you're going to let that simmer. You're going to add a little water. We're going to cover that with this top, and once it simmer all the way down, you're going to see that it's nice and thick. The juice is going to turn into a gravy from the flour that we added to the beef. Okay guys, so here are our peeled potatoes, and I'm going to chop them down this way, right, like that, and then down that way into squares like that. Okay, like that. Okay, so there are our potatoes. Okay guys, so here's the pot roast. You can see that it's getting pretty tender. See how it's breaking apart? Yeah, so don't want to mess that up there. Ooh, it's breaking apart. And it tastes absolutely delicious. But it's getting tender to the point it's almost falling off. The gravy's getting thick. As you can see, it's going to get even thicker when it cooked down. I'm going to let this go for another hour. Okay. We're going to let this simmer on high heat for another hour. Okay, we want our pot roast to get even more tender, and that'll be enough time obviously for the potatoes to get tender as well, but we're going to cut it up to high heat so that this can simmer down. And here it goes guys, your pot roast. It's really tender. The onion powder gave it flavor, the garlic powder gave it flavor, so did the rosemary and the thyme. And it comes right off. Look how tender it is. Look at that. Look at that. Nice and tender. Nice and tender. Do is I like to slice my pot roast down like that. Look at that. Look at that. So tender. Look at that. That's the way my family used to serve it, like that. It's falling apart. Going to add some of the carrots. And the potatoes. See the celery there? There you have your gravy. There you have it, pot roast. Hope you guys enjoy this recipe. It's absolutely delicious.